The Kingston estate stood like a fortress carved from wealth itself, tall iron gates, marble columns, and manicured lawns that looked too perfect to walk on. Inside, silence loomed heavier than the chandeliers overhead. Elena Kingston, only 10 years old, lay unresponsive in her ornate canopy bed, draped in silk sheets no one dared wrinkle. It had been 12 days since she collapsed at a private ballet recital. No convulsions, no fall, just stillness, like someone had pulled her spirit out and left her body behind. Her father, Malcolm Kingston, the richest man in the state, had flown in experts from Switzerland, Japan, and Brazil. None could explain why his only child wouldn't wake. Malcolm paced outside her room like a man who couldn't buy his way out of fear. He had built empires, crushed competitors, and stared down presidents. But nothing prepared him for this. His wife, Clarissa, had long since retreated into herself, numb with sedatives and silence. The staff spoke in hushed tones, the doctors in even quieter ones. Terms like psychogenic coma and non-epileptic unresponsiveness floated through the air like poison gas, intellectual, distant, and useless. No one had answers. No one had hope. Until the doorbell rang at exactly 3:03 p.m. on a Tuesday, echoing like thunder through the marble halls. Lars, the butler, opened the front door and froze. Standing barefoot on the imported granite steps was a black boy no older than 12, his skin sun-darkened and his hoodie 3 sizes too large. His jeans were shredded at the knees. A rolled-up sleeping bag dangled from his back, and a crumpled paper grocery bag hung from one hand. Lars blinked. "Can I help you?" he asked, already stepping forward to usher the child away. But the boy didn't flinch. He looked straight into the butler's eyes and said, "I heard there's a girl here who's lost in the dark. I came to wake her." Lars stammered, momentarily speechless. He'd served dignitaries and movie stars without blinking, but this was absurd. "You're mistaken," he said, though his voice wavered. The boy stepped forward 1 foot. "Her name is Elena," he said softly. "And she's listening. But no one's speaking the right words." Lars backed away instinctively, feeling a chill rise from his spine. "Wait here," he muttered, and disappeared up the staircase. Within minutes, Malcolm Kingston stood before the child himself, dressed in an Italian suit in disbelief. "You think this is a joke?" he barked. The boy simply shook his head. "No, sir. I think it's a chance." Malcolm scoffed, anger flashing behind his eyes. "You think just walking in here, dirty and barefoot, gives you permission to touch my daughter?" The boy met his fury with calm. "I don't want permission," he said. "Just a moment. I'll leave after that. But if I fail, I'll go quietly and never come back." Clarissa, hearing the commotion, drifted into the foyer in a satin robe. Her eyes met the boy's, and she paused. Something in his gaze, the softness, the stillness, made her speak for the first time in days. "Let him try," she whispered. Malcolm turned to her in disbelief, but the war in his soul was already breaking. 5 minutes, he growled. "Touch nothing. Say your piece. Then get out." The boy nodded once and walked barefoot into the mansion's heart. The boy walked through the corridor with quiet steps, his presence unsettling the polished perfection around him. The walls were lined with gold-framed portraits and mirrors too pristine to reflect anything honest. When he entered Elena's room, it felt like time itself paused. A nurse started to object, but Clarissa raised her hand, silencing everyone. The boy approached the bed slowly. Elena lay still, her chest rising and falling as machines whispered steady readings. Her skin looked porcelain against the cream-colored sheets. The boy sat cross-legged on the floor beside her, placing the paper bag gently in front of him. "I brought something," he said to no one in particular. He opened the bag and removed 3 things, a cracked harmonica, a folded paper star, and a tiny jar filled with rainwater. Malcolm scoffed from the doorway. "What is this? A trick?" The boy ignored him. Instead, he placed the paper star gently on the nightstand. "This is from my brother," he whispered. "He never woke up." Then the harmonica beside her pillow. "This is from a man I met under a bridge. Said music reaches places medicine can't." Finally, he unscrewed the rainwater jar and placed it near her hand. "And this is from last night's storm. She needs to remember what falling sky sounds like." Malcolm began to step forward, but Clarissa placed a hand on his chest. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling. The boy then looked at Elena, truly looked at her, like she was more than her silence. "You're not gone," he said softly. "You're just scared. I've been there too." He took a deep breath, pulled the harmonica to his lips, and played. The tune wasn't polished, it cracked, It wavered, but it bled truth. A haunting, gentle melody that sounded like something from the earth itself. As he played, the air in the room changed. Not cooler or warmer, but deeper, like the walls themselves were listening. Nurses exchanged glances. Clarissa gripped Malcolm's hand without realizing it. Something was happening. After a minute, he stopped. The silence that followed was louder than the song. "Elena," he said, barely above a whisper, "I know you don't know me. But I know what it's like to be forgotten. To feel like no one is calling you home." His fingers brushed the back of her hand gently. "But you have a home. You have a father who's angry because he's afraid. You have a mother who hasn't stopped loving you, even when her voice did. You are not alone in this room." Suddenly, a beep. A spike in her heart rate. 1 point. Then 2. The nurse rushed to the monitor. "We have movement," she gasped. Malcolm stepped forward, disbelief shattering into his features. Elena's fingers twitched, once, like a flutter. The boy didn't flinch. "That's it," he whispered. "You're hearing us. But she needs more." He turned to Clarissa. "She needs your story. The one you haven't told since she was born." Clarissa's eyes filled with tears. "What story?" she asked. The boy tilted his head. "The one about the girl who danced in the rain. Your grandmother told it to you. You haven't said it out loud since your mother died." Clarissa choked. "How do you know that?" The boy didn't answer. Clarissa stepped toward her daughter, her legs trembling like a newborn foal's. She hadn't spoken more than a handful of words since Elena fell. But now, as the boy watched with those ageless, steady eyes, something inside her stirred. She pulled a stool close and reached for her daughter's hand. It was warm, warmer than it had been in days. "When I was a girl," Clarissa began, her voice cracking, "my grandmother used to tell me a story. About a girl who danced in the rain because it was the only time she felt like the sky was crying with her." She paused, her breath hitching. "She said when you feel too full to hold any more sorrow, let the rain do the crying for you." Malcolm stared at his wife, stunned. He hadn't heard that voice in what felt like years. Clarissa continued, her fingers now gently stroking Elena's hand. "That girl grew up and stopped dancing. She thought the world was too sharp, too cruel. But one day, she had a daughter, and when that daughter danced in the rain for the first time, barefoot and laughing, she remembered." Her lips trembled. "You brought the rain back to me, Elena." A tear slipped down her cheek. And just then, Elena's eyelids twitched. Slightly. A flicker. The nurse gasped. The heart monitor jumped again. The rhythm wasn't erratic, it was rising. Like something inside her was syncing with the music, the story, the voice of her mother. "She's responding," the nurse said, half whispering, half praying. Malcolm took one trembling step forward, tears threatening to fall. "Is this real?" he asked, almost to himself. The boy nodded. "But she's not there yet," he said softly. "She's halfway home." Malcolm turned to him, his anger evaporated. "What does she need?" The boy looked at him, this man who had towered over boardrooms and bent economies. "She needs your fear. Not the part you hide. The part you buried with your father." Malcolm froze. The words hit him like a brick to the chest. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, though his voice wavered. The boy didn't flinch. "You were 11. He died in that fire. And you never cried. Not once. You decided money was safer than mourning." Malcolm's knees nearly buckled. How do you know that?" The boy's gaze didn't soften. "Because pain echoes. And your daughter hears it inside you, even when you don't speak it." Malcolm stepped closer to Elena's bed, shaking now. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I never told you how scared I was. I thought strength meant silence. But I'm tired of being silent." Clarissa rose and wrapped her arms around him from behind. For the first time in years, the three of them stood, broken, open, real. Elena's fingers curled slightly, the muscles responding to more than a reflex. Her lips moved, just barely. The nurse wept openly now. The machines continued to beep, but it was no longer noise. It was rhythm. Malcolm turned to the boy, tears on his cheeks. "Who are you?" he asked. The boy said nothing. Instead, he reached into his pocket and handed Malcolm the folded paper star. Sometimes people wake up when they realize they were never asleep, just lost. Then he turned and walked toward the hallway. The boy's feet made no sound against the marble as he stepped out of the room. Malcolm called after him, once, twice, but the boy didn't turn. By the time Malcolm reached the hallway, the corridor was empty. No door opened. No footsteps echoed. Just silence, as if the boy had dissolved into the air itself. Malcolm stood there for a long moment, one hand gripping the paper star, his breath shallow. "Did anyone see him leave?" he asked the staff gathered outside. They exchanged confused glances. The cameras showed no entry. No one had signed him in. There was no name, no record. "Then how?" Malcolm whispered, his voice nearly gone. Back in the room, Elena stirred again. Her lips parted, dry and slow, and a sound escaped. "Mama." Clarissa dropped to her knees beside the bed, her hands flying to her daughter's face. "Elena," she gasped. Elena's eyelids fluttered, then opened fully, her eyes scanning the room with the disorientation of someone who'd returned from someplace far away. "You came back," Clarissa whispered, sobbing. Elena blinked slowly. "I heard the music and the rain," she murmured. "And the boy, the barefoot boy. He said you were waiting." Clarissa clutched her daughter, trembling. "We were, baby. We never stopped." Malcolm returned to the doorway, frozen in place. His little girl, the one he thought he might never hear again, was alive. "Elena," he said, barely getting the word out. She turned her head slowly and smiled faintly. "Daddy." The word shattered something in him. He crossed the room in 2 quick strides and collapsed to his knees at her side, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'm so sorry," he wept. "For everything I didn't say. For everything I thought I had to hide." Elena's voice was barely a breath. "He said it wasn't too late. That I should follow the light back to you." The nurses stood stunned, still processing what had just unfolded. The lead physician rushed in, alerted by the staff. Her name was Dr. Aria Bennett, and she had seen miracles before, but never like this. She examined Elena, her brows furrowed in disbelief as the machines confirmed what everyone already knew. Heart stable. Brain activity rising. Reflexes recovering. "This shouldn't be possible," she muttered. Clarissa turned to her, voice steady. "Then don't try to explain it. Just believe it." Dr. Bennett looked up, her eyes meeting Malcolm's. "What happened here?" He held up the paper star. "A boy. That's all I can say. A barefoot boy who gave us back what money couldn't buy." Word spread fast through the mansion, then to the news, though Malcolm refused all interviews at first. He wasn't interested in turning this into spectacle. Not yet. What mattered was Elena, and the boy who somehow knew what no doctor did. That night, Clarissa stayed by her daughter's side, humming the lullaby she hadn't sung in 10 years. Malcolm sat beside them, still clutching the paper star. The rain outside had started again, soft and slow. Elena stirred in her sleep, lips forming the words of a song. The melody was familiar. It wasn't one Malcolm had taught her. It was the same tune the boy had played on his cracked harmonica. Elena whispered in her dreams, "He said to keep singing, even when no one listens." The next morning, Malcolm made it his mission to find the boy. He called the front gate security, reviewed the surveillance footage, even hired a private investigator. But there was nothing, no trace of him entering or leaving. The cameras at the front gate glitched out for exactly 7 minutes during the boy's arrival. The hallway footage showed only Clarissa and Malcolm. The boy simply wasn't there. "It's impossible," the investigator muttered. "He had to have come through somewhere." But Malcolm already knew what they didn't. This wasn't about gates or doors. This was about something else, something beyond logic. And still, he couldn't stop searching. Later that day, Clarissa opened Elena's window to let in the morning breeze. Taped to the outside glass was a folded note, its edges curling from the dew. She opened it with trembling fingers. Written in crooked handwriting were just 10 words. "Sometimes the light waits for the voice to return." No name. No signature. Clarissa pressed the note to her heart, tears slipping down her cheeks. "He's still here," she whispered. "Watching." That night, she and Malcolm sat together, reading the story of the girl who danced in the rain to Elena. Their daughter listened with wide, shining eyes. "He told me that story," she said suddenly, "before I found the light again." Malcolm started attending every therapy session. He stopped taking calls during dinner. He cancelled 3 board meetings in a row just to help Elena pick wildflowers behind the house. Something had shifted in him, permanently. He smiled more. Laughed, even. One afternoon, as he read from Elena's favorite book, he noticed her humming softly. "What's that tune?" he asked. Elena shrugged. "I don't know, but I remember it from the dark. The boy whistled it when I was scared." Malcolm recognized it then. The same melody from the harmonica. He joined in, quietly, and together, they finished the tune. Clarissa began painting again, something she hadn't done in years. Her first piece was a portrait of Elena smiling beneath a sky of falling stars. In the background, nearly hidden in the brush strokes, was a small boy with no shoes and a hoodie too big. She titled it, "The One Who Waits for Light." Word of Elena's recovery spread, but the family refused interviews until Elena was strong enough to speak for herself. When she finally did, she insisted on one thing: we have to share the story. Someone else might be in the dark like I was. Malcolm nodded. We'll share it your way, he promised. So they launched a foundation, the Lightroom Project, offering music, art, and storytelling therapy for children in trauma and recovery. Its motto, chosen by Elena, was painted in big, bold letters above the entrance: even silence can be heard if someone listens hard enough. Their first video on the Foundation's channel featured Elena's voice reading her favorite story, The Girl Who Danced in the Rain, accompanied by Clarissa's art and Malcolm's quiet harmonica playing. Within a week, the video went viral. Comments poured in from hospital wards, foster homes, and shelters. One message read, "I heard the song. I'm not alone anymore." A month later, Clarissa received a letter in the mail, no return address, just a hand-drawn star on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It read, "I knew a boy once. He never spoke of his past, only others. Said his gift was remembering pain that didn't belong to him. He fixed what he could, then moved on. I think your daughter was his next note in the song." Attached was a faded photograph of a boy sitting beside a hospital bed, barefoot, hoodie wrinkled, eyes calm. It wasn't Elena's room. It was dated 5 years earlier. Malcolm stared at it for a long time before whispering, "How many has he helped?" Elena kept the photo taped to her bedroom mirror. Every morning, she'd touch it gently before brushing her teeth. "He's still out there," she told her parents. "Helping someone else." Clarissa smiled. "Do you think he'll ever come back?" Elena thought for a moment, then nodded. "He said when I wasn't afraid anymore, I wouldn't need him. But someone else might." She paused. "He called himself a listener. Said sometimes the world's too loud for kids like us to speak. So he listens through the silence." Malcolm leaned against the doorway, watching his daughter with quiet awe. One evening, as the family walked through the park behind the mansion, they came upon a mural freshly painted on the side of an abandoned amphitheater. It showed a child standing in the rain, arms outstretched, surrounded by light. At his feet, a small phrase was painted in bright yellow, "You're not forgotten. Just not finished." Elena gasped. "That's what he told me." Malcolm pulled her close. "He was here," he whispered. And somehow, they all knew it was true. From that day on, the park became their evening walk route, each visit a silent thank you to the boy they could never name fully, but would never forget. Months passed. Elena grew stronger. Her legs no longer wobbled. Her laugh no longer caught in her throat. She began teaching storytelling to children at the Lightroom Center, kids just like her, who had been through too much too young. Her favorite lesson was about the invisible listener, a character based on the barefoot boy who changed everything. She drew pictures of him in her notebooks, always with his back turned, walking into light. "He doesn't stay," she'd tell them. "Because he's not the ending. He's the bridge." And every child, without fail, believed. On the 1-year anniversary of her awakening, the Kingstons hosted a gathering at the foundation. Survivors, parents, nurses, doctors, all came. Elena stood on the small stage, holding a microphone in both hands. "A year ago," she began, "I was lost. Not asleep. Just somewhere no one else could reach. Until someone came. Not with medicine. Not with money. But with music, and truth, and a story. He didn't ask for anything. He just gave. And now, I want to be that for someone else." The room was silent, save for a soft sniffle in the back row. Elena smiled through her tears. "He gave me light. Now I get to share it." As the applause settled and the evening continued with laughter and quiet conversations, Malcolm stood near the back of the event space, watching Elena with pride swelling in his chest. That's when he noticed a figure near the exit, small, still, and familiar. A boy, maybe 12. Barefoot. Hoodie worn thin, sleeves frayed. He wasn't clapping. Wasn't smiling. Just watching. Malcolm's heart skipped. He stepped forward, pushing through the crowd, eyes locked on the boy. But by the time he reached the door, the boy was gone. Only a single paper star lay where he had stood. Malcolm bent down and picked it up with shaking fingers. He unfolded the star. Inside, a simple note, You're the voice now. Keep singing. Malcolm stood frozen in the doorway, the crowd noise behind him fading. He turned and looked at Elena, now crouched beside a child in a wheelchair, telling her a story softly. Clarissa stood nearby, tears in her eyes, watching it all unfold like the final scene of a play she didn't realize she had been performing in her whole life. Malcolm tucked the star into his jacket pocket and whispered, "Thank you." The air felt warmer then. Not temperature, something else. Presence. Later that night, Elena couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, gazing at the stars. "Do you think he saw?" she asked when Malcolm came in to tuck her in. "He always sees," Malcolm said, brushing her curls back. "Even if we can't see him." Elena nodded. "I just want to make him proud." Malcolm sat beside her. "You already did, sweetheart. You came back." She turned toward him, her eyes wide. "But not just for us. I came back because he told me someone else might need my light next." Her words, though small, carried the weight of something ancient. A week later, a video surfaced online, grainy footage captured by a phone in a downtown bus shelter. A barefoot boy sat on the edge of the bench, holding a paper bag in his lap. Next to him, a woman sobbed into her hands. He leaned over, whispered something, and handed her a folded paper star. The video ended there. The caption read, "This boy stopped my sister from jumping. She said he reminded her of a lullaby our dad used to sing." Clarissa gasped when she saw it. Elena only smiled. "He found someone else," she whispered. From that point on, sightings trickled in. Always the same description: barefoot black boy, gray hoodie, calm eyes. Never staying long. Always leaving behind something: stars, songs, whispers. Some called it myth. Others swore it was real. The Lightroom Foundation set up a map, and soon hundreds of pins dotted cities across the world. No one ever got his name. But Elena knew. "He listens where the world forgets," she wrote in her journal. "And he reminds the forgotten that they are still unfinished." Every night before bed, she'd add one more story to the notebook she kept on her nightstand. She called it Isaiah's Echo. 2 months later, Elena received a package with no return address. Inside was a small, weathered notebook, its cover torn and pages brittle. Tucked inside the front flap was a note: "This belonged to someone who used to listen more than he spoke." He wrote down the names of the people he helped, not with medicine, not with magic, but with memory. Elena's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. Names filled every line. Cities. Emotions. Chicago, Jonah, fear of drowning. Phoenix, Layla, father silence. Each entry ended with the same symbol, a hand reaching toward a star. She turned to the last page. Only one name was written there. Elena, mansion girl, found her way back. Her breath caught. Below it, in faded pencil, was one more line: "She has the voice now." Elena pressed the notebook to her chest, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Clarissa walked in and froze when she saw the expression on her daughter's face. "What is it?" she asked softly. Elena turned, eyes glistening. "It's his list. And I was the last name." Clarissa sat beside her, gently brushing her thumb over the page. "Or maybe," she whispered, "you're the first of the next." That night, Elena asked to visit the mansion's rooftop, her favorite thinking place since recovery. Malcolm carried a blanket and flashlight, Clarissa brought hot chocolate, and the three of them sat under the stars in silence. "Do you think he's alone?" Elena asked suddenly. "Helping all those people?" Malcolm shook his head. "I think he walks with the ones he's helped. Through their voices. Their choices." Clarissa smiled. "That means you walk with him too, sweetheart." Elena looked up at the sky, a single star blinking brighter than the rest. "Then I want to keep walking. With him." Weeks later, Elena stood before a packed auditorium of students at a public school she'd never visited before. She shared her story, about falling into darkness, hearing the harmonica, feeling the rainwater on her hand. The crowd was silent. Not one phone buzzed. Not one eye wandered. When she finished, a young girl raised her hand. "Did the boy really exist?" Elena paused. "He did. I saw him. But more importantly, I heard him. And when I couldn't hear him anymore, I started hearing myself." She smiled gently. "That's how I knew I'd never be alone again." After the event, Elena returned to the light room and placed the weathered notebook inside a glass case beside the front desk. Below it, a plaque read, "Property of Isaiah, listener of echoes." Every new child who visited was encouraged to write their name in a blank book next to it, a new book titled Songs of the Unfinished. Each entry began with the phrase, "My voice matters because," the shelves soon filled with them. The foundation grew. Lives changed. And somewhere, always just out of reach but never out of heart, Isaiah remained, dusty, barefoot, smiling. One autumn evening, after a long day of workshops and interviews, Elena sat alone in her office at the light room. She stared at the blinking cursor on her laptop, trying to write a speech for an upcoming national summit on childhood trauma. But the words wouldn't come. Her fingers hovered, her heart heavy. "What if I'm not enough?" she whispered into the silence. "What if I was just lucky? Just a story people like to believe in?" Her breath caught in her throat. For the first time in months, the darkness crept in again, not around her, but inside. She closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair, tears threatening to fall. The silence in the room felt unbearable. Then, faintly, from somewhere in the hallway, a sound. A soft whistle. A melody she hadn't heard in weeks. The same one he used to play. Elena froze, heart pounding. She rose slowly and followed the sound, her steps careful. The hallway was dim, the lights buzzing overhead. The melody continued, calm, sure, familiar. She turned a corner, and there, sitting on the edge of the indoor fountain, was a boy. Barefoot. Hoodie frayed. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The boy didn't turn. He simply said, "You don't have to be the story. Just the voice." Elena blinked, her throat tight. "How did you know I was?" "Because the ones who give light sometimes forget they need it too," he interrupted gently. He stood, turned toward her. It wasn't Isaiah. It was another boy, same eyes, same stillness, but younger. Smaller. "He said it was my turn to walk now," the boy added. "He helped me. Now I help you." Elena sank to the floor, overwhelmed by emotion. "I thought I was supposed to be the guide now," she said, voice trembling. The boy knelt beside her. "You are. But even guides need echoes." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her a paper star, freshly folded. Inside was a single line in familiar handwriting, "You're never alone when someone remembers." Elena pressed it to her heart and nodded, silent tears falling. "What's your name?" she asked softly. The boy stood. "No one's named me yet. Maybe you will." Elena smiled, something steady returning to her spirit. "Then I'll call you Echo." From that night on, Echo became part of the light room. Not as a mascot, or a mystery, but a mentor. He taught kids how to listen, not just to others, but to themselves. He never asked for credit. Never stood in the spotlight. But when a child cried without words, Echo was there. When a parent broke down in guilt, he sat beside them. And when Elena spoke at the summit weeks later, she looked into the crowd and saw him, hood up, hands folded, smiling from the back row. Her voice rang out clear that day. Because she wasn't just telling a story. She was continuing one. A year to the day since she woke in that grand, silent mansion, Elena returned to the place that changed everything. The Kingston estate had become quieter over time, less fortress, more sanctuary. Her old room still held traces of that long sleep, the canopy bed, the rain jar, the harmonica on the windowsill. Clarissa had turned the room into a space for reflection, not memory. Elena walked slowly across the floor, barefoot, just like he had. She paused by the window, where once a note had been taped. In her hand now was another one. She folded the new note carefully, same paper, same star shape. Inside, she'd written only 6 words, "You are not forgotten. Ever." She taped it to the inside of the windowsill and stepped back. A breeze caught the edge, making it flutter gently. She smiled. "Just in case someone else comes looking," she whispered. Downstairs, Malcolm waited with Clarissa and 2 new foundation volunteers. They were planning a new light room location, this one for teenagers who had aged out of foster care. Elena joined them at the kitchen table, laughing softly as she sipped tea. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt held. That night, as the stars shimmered above, a small silhouette approached the mansion's gate. A young girl, maybe 10, stood alone on the sidewalk, clutching a torn backpack. She stared up at the iron fence, unsure. Her eyes were wide, scared, searching. Then the wind shifted. A paper star caught in a breeze floated down and landed near her feet. She picked it up, unfolded it, and read the words. "Not forgotten," she whispered. Behind her, a voice, gentle, calm. "Are you looking for the light?" She turned. A boy stood nearby, hoodie too big, harmonica dangling from his fingers. The girl nodded, hesitantly. "I think so." The boy smiled. Then you're in the right place. He held out a hand, and without a word, she took it. Together they walked up the path toward the side entrance, where the porch light had just flickered on. Upstairs, the breeze ruffled the curtains of Elena's old room, the note on the window glowing softly in the moonlight. The mansion, once a place of silence and sorrow, now held a rhythm, like a heartbeat. Not just of one miracle, but of many. One voice passing to the next. Elena never saw the girl that night. But the next morning, she found a fresh harmonica resting on her desk with a single message etched into the side: "Keep listening." She closed her eyes, held the harmonica to her chest, and nodded. Isaiah's voice, Echo's steps, the girl's courage, it was all the same thread now. Woven through her, through the foundation, through every child who'd ever been silent and finally learned to speak. She sat at her desk, opened her notebook, and began a new story. This time, it didn't begin with pain. It began with presence. 2 years later, the light room wasn't just a center. It was a movement. With chapters across the country and whispers of expansion abroad, the mission was clear: teach children and adults alike that healing begins with being heard. Elena became the voice of the project, but she never claimed credit. In every interview, every panel, she'd say the same thing: "I'm just one echo of a boy who taught me to listen." Networks called her a prodigy. Universities wanted to study her recovery. But she refused the labels. "It wasn't science that saved me," she once told a reporter. "It was memory, melody, and mercy." At a global youth summit held in Geneva, Elena was invited to speak. She stood on stage in a simple white dress, no makeup, no teleprompter. Just her voice. "When I was 10, she began, I fell into silence. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to speak my truth. A boy found me there. Not a doctor. Not a priest. A barefoot boy with a harmonica and a paper bag." She paused, letting the crowd sit in the quiet. "He didn't fix me. He reminded me. And now I get to remind others." After the speech, she received a standing ovation. But what moved her most was the message slipped under her hotel room door that night. It read, "You carried the light well. Time for another hand to hold it now." No signature. Just a paper star folded into perfect symmetry. She held it to her heart and smiled through tears. She didn't need to chase him. He was never meant to stay. Isaiah had passed the echo to her, and she, now, would pass it again. The light would never be extinguished, not as long as someone remembered the sound of hope. Back at the Mansion Turn Foundation headquarters, Echo now helped lead storytelling sessions. He was taller, older, but still wore the same hoodie, sleeves stitched by Elena herself. Kids gathered around him like campfire light. He never said much. Just enough. A new mural had been painted on the exterior wall, a massive image of dozens of children walking together, each casting a shadow shaped like stars. And beneath it, in bold lettering, "We are the voices of those who listened." Elena stood beside Echo one afternoon, watching a group of kids laugh. "Think he knows?" she asked. Echo nodded. "He always knows." On the 5th anniversary of Elena's awakening, the foundation released a final video, one she had written and narrated herself. It featured images of rainstorms, hospital rooms, paper stars, and dancing feet. The last shot showed her standing barefoot in the same hallway where Isaiah had first vanished. Her voice echoed over the scene, "He didn't wake me up. He reminded me I was never really gone. Just waiting." The video closed with a line that soon became etched in the hearts of millions: "Miracles don't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes, they hum a tune and walk away barefoot." If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful, emotional stories that shine light in dark places, stories of healing, hope, and the unseen heroes who remind us we're never truly alone. Your next miracle might be just one story away. Subscribe now, and keep the echo going.